Hey, friends, welcome to episode 2 of The Great Unbecoming. Before we get started, I just want to say what you're about to hear was an episode that I had intended to be the first episode of season 2, but I changed my mind. And if you had already heard last week's episode, you know why. It's because I talked to April LaJoy about her book, Star Spangled Jesus. If you have not listened to the first episode of this season, please go back, do yourself a favor and listen to it. It's an amazing book, and it's a really, really good conversation with April about Christian nationalism, what Christian nationalism is, what it isn't, how it's impacted her, how she's moved through it, and how she's bettering the world now because of what she learned in that season of her life. It's a fantastic episode, and it's a fantastic book. So I recorded that episode intending for that to be somewhere down the line in season 2. But as we were talking, and I was like, oh, wow, this is very timely. And I just wanted to get it out as soon as possible. So that's why I put that episode first. And so this episode is all about my journey from kind of where I was when I ended season 1 to where I was today, to where I am now in this new environment with these new beliefs. This is a story that you're about to hear all about my own unbecoming from the last year. I hope you enjoy. Hello, my friends. Eric Feltus here, life coach, speaker, actor, and host of The Great Unbecoming. This is a show about stories of unlearning. What did you let go of in order to become the person you are today? And what did you gain and learn as well? This is a show about letting go of stories that no longer serve us and stepping into our own authenticity. It's about unbecoming what society says you should be and remembering who you are and who you are meant to be. So sit back, relax, and welcome to The Great Unbecoming. I'm going to take you on a journey, my journey. I took you on a journey in the first episode of season 1, my journey of coming out of the closet, going from a place of tolerating being gay to celebrating being gay. And so today, I'm going to take you on a journey from leaving the church all the way to the place of going to high school. And it's all in that order. And so the story starts leaving church. So basically, this is going to be a lot of what happened from after the last episode. And you're thinking, wait, Eric, you did not enter high school since the last episode. Even though you look really good for your age, you're not that young. But we'll get to that. We'll get to how I got back into high school in a little bit at the end. So you're going to have to stick around to the end, my friend. So leaving church, yeah. I lived, by the way, if you're watching this, you can see I'm in a different location. I moved, but we're going to get there. I left the church at some point in time after the last episode, after the podcast took a break. I decided that I needed to take a break from the small group that I was leading at church. And in doing that, I was like, I actually think I need to take a break from church, not just the small group. So I'll tell you like a couple of things, but there's no blame here. I think that would be a waste of time. I'm not naming names. This is not about anyone at the church. Well, it's really about me, but even though it had to do with some relationships in the church, it doesn't, that part doesn't matter for the sake of this. So let's just say that I wasn't really happy. There's some things that were happening at the church that I was going to that I just wasn't really happy with. And I realized, I stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, I don't love being here anymore. And, blame aside, and just because I say that doesn't mean I didn't like being around anyone. There was just some reasons as to why I didn't feel good there. And that's all you have to know. I'm detaching from the actual narrative of that story because it doesn't matter. And it's more just about checking with how I felt. I didn't feel like it was a place of spiritual wellness for me anymore, this church. And so what I told myself was, I'm going to take a break. And so I stopped going to church. I took a break from the small group, and I was like, you know what? Until the new year, I'm just going to take a break. And I did. And I don't remember when I started the break, but the new year came, and I was like, I've been really, really happy not being there. So I'm like, maybe I should just continue to not go there. And I continued, and I haven't been to church since. And I've never been happier. And I realized that I started going to that church when I was really looking for community, and church can be a fantastic place for community. Some churches, and yeah, but I just didn't feel like I was spiritually fed there. I didn't feel a sense of expansiveness when I was there. I was feeling more drained than anything by serving in the volunteer capacities that I was serving. And it just didn't feel good. And so what's amazing is that my spirituality has been amazing lately, which we'll touch on some of that. And spirituality to me is like, it can be like water. Like, it's very hard to hold. It's hard to define. It's hard to quantify. There's not one way of feeling spiritual. But it was mind-blowing because I finally realized that church ain't it for me. And so I don't know what the word Christianity means to me anymore. I don't know how, in what ways I identify as a Christian, and how that's changed. I think that Jesus was an amazing prophet, an amazing teacher. I want to be more like Jesus. I personally, and you are welcome to disagree with me on any level, but I personally do not feel as if you need to believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior to get to heaven. I believe that when, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, that when Jesus said, all may enter the kingdom of heaven through me, that was a call to action to be social justice warriors, not to believe in a certain thing in order to get to a certain place. I believe that heaven is a place we can create here on earth through our actions, through kindness, through love, through inclusivity, through social justice, through standing up for the people, through using your voice for the voiceless, for feeding the poor. And I believe that hell is a place that we go to here on earth, for example, when we use Jesus as a weapon against marginalized groups of people. I believe, and I've said this before again, but I'll say it again. I believe that those who crucified Jesus 2,000 years ago are the same people that use Jesus as a weapon against people today in their high and mighty pillars and thrones. I just am done with it. I'm done with that. But I very much love Jesus, and I want to be more like Jesus. So yeah, there are some days where I'm like, yeah, that absolutely makes me a Christian. And there are other days where I'm like, well, maybe I don't like that title. And that's okay too. And I'm kind of sitting in the gray, and I'm okay with that. I don't talk this in depth about that on Instagram because Instagram is Insta. I don't know what that is. Instagram is like a bunch of bumper stickers. You can't get an entire full-fledged feel about someone on a bumper sticker. And so sometimes social media can be more divisive than it is inclusive or helpful. So I pick the different mediums to talk about different things and beliefs and ideas. And this is an ever-evolving thing. That is not why I left this church. That doesn't matter, though. But I bring that up again because in the absence of church, I was like, oh, I enjoy sleeping in on Sundays. I enjoy going on a hike with my dog on Sundays. I enjoy leaning deeper into meditation and coffee with friends and coffee alone and breath work and yoga and journaling and getting to know myself and connecting with myself. And to me, that is all spirituality. To me, that is all Christ. Richard Rohr, I've talked about his book. He's written many books, but one being Universal Christ, talks about this notion of Christ being this universal message of love and inclusion. It's not bound to Christianity. Words are very finite, whereas love is very infinite. And so I think that, the word Jesus might feel very, it can mean different things to different people. And so I think it's not bound to one religion, love, Christianity, Christ. It's a universal concept of mind, body, soul connection. And we are all one. So I left the church. I felt good about leaving the church. And then something really interesting happened. I started feeling depressed. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, y'all. The business was going well, but I was not feeling, and while I was leaning into some of these different practices more, I wasn't feeling good at all. I was feeling overwhelmingly depressed. Now, to be very clear, I'm a life coach. I help gay men free themselves from religious shame and build communities. But I say that because I'm a life coach, not a therapist. So I'm going to talk about depression from the viewpoint not of a therapist at all, as a human that's experienced symptoms of depression. If you yourself are experiencing depression, I would suggest talking to a therapist yourself. But for me, it was just this overwhelming sense of loneliness, sadness. I was lethargic. I was unmotivated. I felt very lost, and I felt hopeless. And I just got this sense that I don't have community, which is funny since I was just talking about being in church for community, but I didn't really feel like I was getting it there either, if I'm being honest. I felt disconnected, and I felt something was wrong with me, which is interesting as a coach that helps men with shame to be experiencing shame, aka the belief that something is wrong with me. I sense the irony, but it's where I was at. And so I dug deeper into some of this with my therapist. I dug deep into some of this with my life coaches. Yes, I have more than one. I work with someone on mindset. I work with someone on business. And a lot of times that's very interchangeable because there's so much mindset necessary, positive mindset, healthy mindset necessary to run a successful business, especially when you're a life coach that helps men with their mindset. Just to be very clear, in case you haven't heard me talk about this, there is a difference between coaching and therapy. I'm going to get into that right now. Therapy focuses a little more on the past and how that affects your present. Coaching picks up where you are now and helps you get the life you want in the future. And so for my therapist, we dug a lot into past trauma, unresolved issues from my past, how that it's affecting me today. Coaches would help me kind of with where I'm at today, purge some of this negativity, this unresolved trauma that I'm feeling today to help me to get the life that I want in the future. I think both serve people. I think both can be amazing. The number one thing I hear, well, first of all, people that have had backgrounds in therapy tend to do pretty well in the work with me because they're emotionally literate. But it's sort of, if you just do therapy and not coaching, it's sort of like getting the pieces for the IKEA desk without the instructions. Okay, great. I'm emotionally literate. I'm mindful. What do I do about it now? Whereas coaching can help you to put the pieces of the desk together to get a desk, right? So they've both served me. I'm actually not in therapy now, but it has served me in the past, and I recommend it if you feel you need it. But it is different. That's one difference with coaching and therapy. Another difference is that coaches can be a little more personable with you because we don't have the same mandates that therapists have. And so that's why I work with a very specific niche group of people. Gay men that have experienced similar trauma that I have, similar spiritual abuse, similar feelings of not good enough, not worthy of belonging, not having community. I felt all of that. And so I can share my own stories with my clients. And so we have a little more of a personable relationship in that way. But that, just in case you need to know, now you know. So back to the work. I was back deeper in with my therapist, deeper in with my coaches. I was journaling on a daily basis. I was meditating on a daily basis. And I was purging a lot, and that's good, right? So journaling is helpful because, it allows you to kind of feel the feels because you're thinking the thoughts subconsciously anyway. by journaling, you kind of detach from it. 85% of our fears are in negative beliefs, our fears and negative beliefs that we had yesterday. And so get it out of your head. It's just ruminating over and over and over. Get it out of your head onto paper. That was all really helpful. So I was doing the work. Now, I couldn't help but think that I was missing something because I kept having this belief that something's wrong with me. Why don't I feel like I have community? Now, to give credit, I did have friends. You've heard me talk to some of my friends in season 1 from Los Angeles. I did and still do have those friends, even though I'm not there anymore. Spoiler alert, I did move out of LA, but we'll get there. But yeah, so I did have friends and I still do have friends there. But for me, I just felt like it was hard to develop deeper relationships and to not feel so lonely for many reasons. I think that a lot of the culture of a city is dependent on the structure, the physical structure and layout of said city. For one, LA is expensive, so it's not easy to go out all the time. It's also incredibly sprawling, so people live far away. It's also filled with a lot of busy people, and I don't use that word positively. Everyone is such doers, which can be a positive thing, but it's not always a positive thing. You say that neutrally. If people are active, that can be good. But sometimes when we're busy, we miss out on connection. We're doing. Oh, I got all these appointments. I have these auditions. I have these creative endeavors. I have these rehearsals. I have all this stuff. I have these 9 jobs because I'm a multi-hyphenate. And so you'd say something to someone like, hey, I'd love to hang out with you. And they'd say, yeah, that sounds great. What are you doing in 3 Tuesdays from now? Or even more frustratingly, it'd be like, hey, we should hang out. Yeah, we should. Okay, bye. Oh my God, if you're watching this on camera right now, you're seeing my dog do such a big stretch and a big sigh. And when you have a dog, you know that when a dog does a big stretch, you gotta say that they're doing a big stretch no matter what. KK, you're doing a good big stretch, little girl. Such a big stretch for such a little girl. Okay, back. So it's just hard. It was hard in LA. But I also had this very stubborn attitude of like, yeah, okay, but it's LA. And you've been here 8 years. And you're 38, so you can't move. In other words, you've been here 8 years. You've built a life here. You've built connections here. You do have friends here. For one, your best friend Megan is here. You can't not be near her. It reminds me, this is such a random connection, but it reminds me of that one moment in The Office. If you watch The Office or really know The Office, you know what I'm talking about. There's a moment where Pam from The Office wants to do this like artist program or classes to be a better artist. I don't remember exactly what it was. Like a scholarship or a mentorship program, something like that. And she goes, oh, I can't because of XYZ. And Jan says to her something to the effect of, there will always be a million reasons to say no. And I, in that moment in Los Angeles, was coming up with the million reasons to say no. And I was like, well, maybe I should explore another option. And I had played around with, well, I'll visit another city. But then I would get into a relationship and I think, well, no, I can't. Another reason to say no. So at this point I was single and I picked Atlanta to visit because it checked all of the boxes that I wanted on paper. It was not Chicago weather in the winter. I love Chicago. I lived there before moving to Los Angeles. I'm from outside Chicago. I love a lot about Chicago, but I hate, listen, when you're standing on the L outside, fun fact, if you're not from Chicago, L is short for elevated train. The subway system, they call it the L because the train is elevated and it's outside. So you're standing on this elevated train in negative 30-degree wind chill, wondering why Why am I doing this? But then it becomes like 50 degrees for the first time in Chicago, and you're like, can you feel a brand new day? And you're like stripping off your clothes, and it's like, this is what happiness feels like. I haven't felt this in 9 months. So there are reasons people stay, because then they forget how painful the winter is. But never again, never again. And if you've ever left that weather, you understand. People there that haven't left, like, wear misery like a badge of honor. I used to be one of them. Well, it's okay. It's not that bad. I can be miserable. No, it's that bad. But other than the weather, Chicago's a great city. But anyway, so check mark number 1, I wanted not Chicago weather. It didn't have to be sunny and 72 like it is in LA all the time, but I didn't want Chicago weather. So there's one. Check mark number 2, I wanted a gay-friendly community. Check mark number 3, I wanted an acting community, because I still am pursuing and I am still acting and auditioning. And then thing number 4, I really wanted to be closer to my family. I discovered my parents retired, moved from outside Chicago to Florida. My sister and her family also live in Florida. And 12 hours, 2 flights, 12 hours, because of the layover and because of the time change or whatever, from LA to Florida. That's awful. And so anytime I visited them, it was just, I wasn't happy. And it wasn't their fault, but I was not happy. And then, sleeping in a room that's not mine, or staying in a hotel at the time, before my parents moved, staying in a hotel with them or something like that. It just felt like anytime I saw my family, or anytime my family visited me, it was like forced fun, because we wanted to get all of these things into this short trip. And I just didn't like that. Like, I was tired and moody, and so it wasn't good. So anyway, those are my check marks. That's what I wanted. And the only city that I could think of that had all of those on paper was Atlanta, and I had never been to Atlanta. And I, at the time, was afraid, thinking, I don't know if I want to live in a not fully blue state. But I'm like, you know what? Go visit. So I did. I booked a ticket. I decided to go right before Christmas last year, at least last year of when I'm recording this. I think that was 2023. Yeah, it was 2023. And oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I'm pretty sure I stopped going to church a year ago from when I was recording this in October. Weird. Okay, so I booked a ticket, and then after that, I was going to go straight from there to Christmas at my parents' house in Florida. And I was like, I'm going to go. In the back of my head, I was like, I'm going to go so that I can cross it off my list and be like, great, I knew I wouldn't like it. I'll just have to make LA work. And y'all, I went, and that's not how I felt. I fell in love with Atlanta. And I was shocked. I met people easily. I made connections easily. It was in October, or sorry, no, it wasn't. It was in, I guess it had to have been in December. And was it right before? I think so. Yeah, it had to have been, but it wasn't. I remember, okay, now I know why I'm confused. Is because I haven't been here for this December yet when I'm recording this. And I remember the weather like kind of reminded me of like a crisp fall day. That's why it reminded me of October. A crisp fall day in Chicago. But it wasn't. It was like early December in Atlanta. But I stayed by Piedmont Park, which is this beautiful big park. And it just, there were like these beautiful brick houses there, and it was like crisp air, and that's what it did. Yeah, it reminded me of like a Chicago fall, but it was Atlanta December. I just loved it. I loved the wet. And I didn't realize that I really did want change of seasons. I liked that feel. I missed that. I went to a bar with a new friend I made. He also showed me the Beltline, which, if you don't know, the Beltline is this I want to say it's 44-mile, used to be train tracks around the city of Atlanta. and they've paved or are in the process of paving over it and making it a walking trail. It's not all complete yet. The area I live in is off the Beltline now, and it's like 10 years old, but there are places that are even more newly developed. And off the Beltline, they're making, cafes and restaurants and shopping center, but it's really cute and walkable and green. And I didn't have any of that in LA. I walked out of my apartment and it was dirty, and there wasn't a really great place for me where I live to walk my dog. And I was kind of landlocked in between, like on this block, in between super busy streets. And if you walk a dog, you know how important like your block is to you because you see it every day outside. LA is not very walkable. I was always told that Atlanta's not, and there are places that are not walkable in Atlanta, but the places I visited with this new friend were. So I was like, maybe I could find something a little walkable. Anyway, I loved it. And then I did, like I said, I went out with a couple of newer friends, and I got home that night, and it was like 1 a.m, but it was 10 at night in LA. So I called my friend Megan, who is in season 1. I talked to her in season 1. But I just burst into tears, and I was like, Megan, I love it. And she's like, why are you crying? And I was like, because I gotta move. And in that moment, I realized that like she was the one thread holding me there. Like my best friend, my straight wife, quote unquote, my person, my family, my chosen family was keeping me there. And I was already grieving the loss of constant walks every week with our dogs, going over and crashing on her couch, and having coffee with her the next morning. Going to the park with her and our dogs. Like, that's our family. That was our family, our 2 dogs and her and me. She went through more than one breakup with me, or helped me get through more than one breakup. We used to live together. We went to college together. She knows me. And I just said, I love you so much, and I'm going to miss you so much. And she starts crying. And she said what I didn't realize I needed to hear at the time, which was, Eric, you will always be my family. You will always be my family. And in that moment, y'all, like I felt released. And I don't mean that she was holding me. She wasn't. But I think subconsciously I needed permission from her to let go of LA, because that's not reason enough to stay somewhere. It's not. And from there, I was like, all of those excuses I've made, I'm too old, I'm too tired, I'm too scared, I don't have enough money, either too much of something or not enough of something else, is all bullshit. It's all bullshit, because that's all fear is bullshit. It's excuses that are trying to keep you alive, but in keeping you alive, they are preventing you from living. And I said, okay. And then I just knew I was going to do it. And I told myself, I'm moving in a year. And so that was my plan, to move next winter. Oh my goodness. And then I go home and I tell my family, and oh my God, I didn't want to get my mom's hopes up or my dad's hopes up because they really wanted me closer to them too. But I said, yeah, I'm doing it. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And in that trip, during that trip, it was like a 5-day trip in Florida. Guys, I had never been that was the best. So I flew. I typically drive now, but I flew from Atlanta to Jacksonville, and it was like, oh my God, this was like an hour flight, because it's a 5-hour drive, something like an hour, something like that, versus like 2 flights, 3 time zones, a full day, And I was so much happier and stress-free when I was there. And that felt so good. It was like the confirmation bow on top of everything else that I needed. So, yeah, at the beginning of that Florida trip, I was like, I'm going to move next Christmas. It gives me a year. And by the end of the trip, I said, I'm moving as soon as my lease is up, which is May. So I moved it up a lot. And I didn't tell Megan right away that I was moving in May. I let it I just like wanted to get back to like us and our nuclear family. And I eased her into that. It was hard. It was hard for both of us. And I realized, it's funny, when I first started this podcast today, this one that I'm making right now, I was going to come up with like a bullet point of lessons. Here are 5 lessons I've learned in the last year. But I was like, screw it. I'm just going to start talking, and I think the lessons will organically pop up. Because here's something else I learned about myself. I hold people at bay. I keep people away. And Megan was, everyone's one of them to a certain extent, but even as close as she and I are, I kept her away. And everyone else in LA. And I realized it's because I always feel like LA is so transient and people are going to leave anyway. Ironic, because I had no one that left. But so I was like, well, I can't keep people close, because then they just won't be close forever, and they're going to leave, or I'm going to leave, and that's going to hurt. And so a big lesson I learned in the last year was, you don't need to see someone once a week, once a month, once a year, whatever, in order for you to allow yourself to be close to them when you do see them. And I think I've been so afraid of people not being in my life that I keep people at bay, even my best friend. So that was huge. That was a huge lesson. So I let her in more, and I let people, not everyone, but some people in more. And I really enjoyed the time that I had with them, because I knew that time was finite at that moment. And that's something that I'm still working on, is letting those walls down. But we got a lot closer. Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know, because I didn't realize how much I was putting LA on a pedestal, and how much those fears were just nonsense. Additionally to that statistic of 85% of your fears are repeated, the same ones from yesterday. Additionally, 85% of our fears are unfounded. We find that they never come true. And of the 15% that do come true, we find that we either learn very good lessons from them, or that they're not as bad as we thought they were going to be. That's true with all of those fears that I was experiencing. Because moving is stressful, for sure, but I've learned great lessons from it, and it wasn't as terrible as I was mounting it up to be in my head. So I made that decision. I am moving in May, right when my lease is up, and nothing can stop me. So pretty quickly after that, I booked another plane ticket to April, and I actually asked my parents to come down so they could stay with me and look at apartments. So that was in the books. I was doing it. I started telling people. It was still like 6 months away, but that's where I was. Then something interesting happened. And we're gonna leave it there. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just talked, and so I wanted to break it up. So I leave you something to look forward to for next week. Thank you for joining me on this messy process that is unbecoming. Unbecoming that which no longer serves us, to become the person and the people that we are meant to be. Everything is the process of unbecoming, including this podcast. These episodes are not going out in the order that I thought they would. And part of unbecoming is embracing imperfection and letting go of perfectionism. So I promise the next episode, I'm going to wrap up the story for you. So do come back for that. We have so many more amazing guests lined up for season 2. You guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to these people and to get your brains thinking. If you need me, reach out to me. Email me, eric@lifecoachingbyfeltus.com. If you're interested in my 10-week program that's designed to help gay men build community and free themselves from religious shame, you can also email me, eric@lifecoachingbyfeltus.com. All you need to do is email me the word help. That's it, and I'm there for you. If you liked what you heard today or have liked any of these episodes, please leave me a review and share these episodes with your friends and your family. It really means the world to me for you to do that. And I will see you next week.